Hey, what is the Bible? Well, I am very glad you asked that question. The Bible is the holy book of Christianity. It was written over several thousand years and contains 66 books written by a variety of authors. It's divided into two main sections, the Old Testament and the New Testament. The Old Testament contains 39 of the 66 books of the Bible, and it stretches from Genesis all the way through the book of Malachi, and it composes the bulk of the Bible. Now, there are several genres or categories within the Old Testament, the first of which is the genre of history. So this, as the name suggests, contains history. It is the story from the creation account through the calling of Abraham, the rise of Israel as a nation state, through their fall and exile, and eventual return to the promised land. Within the genre of history as well, you have the laws that God gave to govern the people of Israel. The second category is that of poetry and wisdom. This contains books such as Job and the great song book of the Bible, Psalms, Proverbs, Ecclesiastes, the Song of Solomon. You have these books within the poetic and wisdom tradition because even the wisdom was written in a poetic fashion. The third major category for the Old Testament is that of prophecy. This is the record of the prophets who prophesied to Israel and Judah, warning them to repent or else they would have to face the judgment. And they warned them that judgment was coming. The prophets are further divided into two more categories, the major prophets and the minor prophets. And this isn't because one is better than the other or one is worse than the other. It merely has to do with the thickness, the length of their writing. The major prophets wrote more. They're thicker if you look at the Bible, and the minor prophets are thinner, sometimes the smallest being only one chapter long. And that is the Old Testament really in a nutshell. The Christian Old Testament is very similar to the Hebrew Bible. The order is a little different. The way it's structured is a little different, but it is essentially the same. That leads us to the second division of the Bible. That is the New Testament. The New Testament is composed of 27 of those 66 books, and like the Old Testament, it has genres as well. The first genre is that of the Gospels. This is composed of 4 books, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. The Gospels are not so much straight-up biographies as somebody has called them a theological biography. The Gospel writers have a point to show in the life of Jesus, and they talk about various different things. And sometimes they talk about the same things, and they line up side by side. And for example, in John, he talks about stuff that he says, the others have talked about stuff. I'm going to talk about stuff they haven't talked about. That is the gospel. It is the life and death and resurrection of Jesus Christ. And that is what the gospels are about. The second category is the category of history. And there's only one book in the Bible that is that category, and that is the book of Acts, written by Luke, who also authored one of the Gospels. And it tells the story of the early church. After this, you have the category or the genre of letters, or epistles, as you might have heard them called. And these are, as this title suggests, these are letters. And there are various different categories for letters. There are Paul's letters, and you can even subdivide Paul's letters into the letters he wrote to churches and the letters he wrote to individual people. The other category of letters are what's called the general epistles, or the general letters, and they contain essentially Hebrews through Jude, and these are written by multiple authors, Peter and John, and so they are also to churches, some of whom we don't know the exact church they were sent to, but they're letters to churches. And then finally, you have one last category in the New Testament, and that is the book of prophecy, the Revelation, written by John. And it talks about future events and what is going to happen and the hope that Christians should have when thinking about the future and God and Jesus' return and God setting things right. That's the Bible in a nutshell. There are other traditions who have one more category called the Apocrypha, and they insert that in between the Old Testament and the New Testament. As a Protestant, I don't hold to the Apocrypha. I think they're interesting. They make some good readings. Historically, they're very interesting, but I do not hold them on the same category as the Old Testament and the New Testament. But some do. I am not one of them. But they are valuable and they offer some insight because even Jude in his letter quotes or references a couple of those apocryphal books. So are they interesting? Yes. Do I consider them part of the Bible? I do not. So that's the Bible in a nutshell. That's some Bible basics. As far as how it's organized, how it's structured. We'll get into some more detail in a few further videos. Thank you for watching. If you like this, please like it, please share it, and please subscribe to keep up with what's going on here. Thank you so much. Have a great day.